This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
And welcome back, everyone. Everybody's got a story. And if I were to say to you, what's your story? And I really mean go deep. Think about, from when you were younger, growing up to the point you're at now, you'd be able to verbalize it. It's your story, so you can be able to tell it. The question today is that story true? Is it totally true? I betcha that there's pieces of that story that you think are true, but really isn't the truth. And we're talking about a lot of things that began in your childhood that pilot you today. We'll get deeper into that. Recap that from the last time we talked with her. She's a transformational speaker, Reiki therapist, pastoral counselor, intuitive guide, interfaith minister. She's helping us heal. And I've gotten so much clarity from her. And no surprise, because her last name is Clearday. I'm talking about Chris Clearday, joining us once again on the program. Welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Steve. Glad to be here with you again.
Yeah, the stuff we talk about, I actually share with those close to me. And I very much mean that, of some of the things that I've learned, figured out, validation of things I wondered about. The story is big. Now, before we go into our stories or the stories that we tell ourselves, let's take a look at last week. Can we recap that for a sec?
Sure. So last week we explored how our worst, earliest childhood memories negatively impacted our self-esteem and helped create the false narrative that became the recurring victim theme in our lives, in our adulthood. Now, I define that as our addiction to suffering, and everybody has their own unique one, okay? But the bottom line is that this thread of suffering just kind of weaves its way through the fabric of our lives. And I think that if we all really look at this, we can begin to understand that we are and have been the unconscious author of this mostly victim narrative. Listen, their life has real struggle. I'm not talking about when things are actually really terrible. I'm talking about the tendency that we have as human beings to just kind of cling to the negative things that happen to us, that informed us from childhood, that changed us in our adulthood. And I think what we're really talking about here is once you realize that you are the author of your own story, you can begin to rewrite it. So this week I wanted to really dismantle the false narrative and distinguish our story from the truth. Because our story is always different from the truth until we have an opportunity to really, really dismantle it and put it back together. So I've got step-by-step process that should be helpful in doing that.
I'm intrigued because I think back, through the years in my life and what the story would be. And I'm trying to stick to the facts. There's certain things that happen. That's a fact. Then the other thing, and that is a fact. There might be some gray territory in some of the things, how I might have interpreted them. But when things have happened to you, they are facts. How do you distinguish what the story is from the things that are facts?
Okay, great question. So the story is your perception filtered through your lens, the lens of suffering. And the fact is actually just what happened. So the story is often removed from the facts, and the story has so much power that it shows up in your family. It shows up in your marriage, if you're married, or in your primary relationship. It shows up in your relationships with your children and your extended family, your parents. It shows up at work. It shows up in your friendships. Basically, the story is running the show from behind the scenes. And that robs our power because, if we're on autopilot, then we're not being as conscious as we can be.
So let's pick a scenario. I could pick one in my life. You tell me what to do here, but I want to like look at the fact and what the story could be.
Got it.
So I don't know. There's many different things that have transpired, like in all of our lives. Picking facts here. My dad passed away when I was 21. I wasn't super close with him. Parents got divorced, when I was much, much, much younger. Fact. Um, where could the story go awry? Where could within those facts? I'm
Yeah.
trying to process that. I'm just picking one thing randomly here.
Okay, so the story can go awry when you add to it. So if you didn't have a good relationship with your father, if you made that mean that he didn't love you, that he didn't maybe you made it mean that he didn't know you or understand you, maybe that's true. See, that's where we have to really,
Hmm.
because what difference does it make if he didn't know you or understand you? It changes the story.
It does.
But the story, the false narrative lies in victimhood. So if you said, I am disappointed or sad that when my father died, he didn't have an opportunity to really know who I was, and I didn't really have an opportunity to know who he was, then that might be a balanced perspective.
Understood. Understood. Hmm. Um, and there's other pieces there where a few months before he passed, maybe even weeks, um, as I understand it, he said that he was very proud of me.
Hmm.
And
Right.
for a number of reasons, long story short, um, he was able geographically to listen to me on the radio and never really had the opportunity because he was in a different county.
Mhm.
And then he passed right after that. So, I think maybe my mom told me that or something. But then, I took that to heart. I was like, oh, cool. Wow. Wow. Okay. All right. Um, but even when I just said that I wasn't super close with him, it's almost as if, and I'm processing this as I go along here, it's almost as if I dropped myself into a victim mode right there.
Well, I think that it's natural for us to go towards the victim mode, honestly.
Hmm.
And we have to pull ourselves out and listen, the truth is with a capital T that we have been victims. Like this is the truth. Yes, we have been. The question is, what are we going to do about it? I think it's our obligation to make the best out of everything that happens, to choose to be better, not bitter as we have discussed before. So I'm not saying that bad things don't happen. They do. I'm just
Hmm.
saying when it colors your perspective, when you take a paintbrush and you paint the suffering broadly in your story, just don't forget that yes, your father did love you and he was proud of you. And there are all kinds of other things that were said or done that would be in alignment with that.
Hmm.
It
Okay.
prove, they prove that basically.
It's just a different way to look at it. Like when you start processing it, in terms of the truth, like asking yourself, this is the story you're telling others or yourself.
Hmm.
Is it really, really true? In my example, he did pass. Fact. Can't deny it. You know, things around it, how factual are they? How true is that story? Or is that my interpretation of the story?
Right. I mean, it really requires careful consideration. I mean, I wasn't planning on sharing this today, but my mom died about 3 weeks after she called me to tell me that she was sorry for paying my ex-husband, who I was in the process of divorcing, $3,000 to get a lawyer and prove me an unfit mother so that she could get more access to my daughter because I wasn't going to give her unlimited access to my daughter because she had been abusive to me and I wasn't going to let her be in a situation with my daughter unsupervised. And my mother had the courage to call me and tell me this and insist, by the way, that someone else was present on the phone call and that it was tape recorded. So I have the recording. My friend Ruth Snyder, who was a guardian ad litem representing the best interest of children in court, was who I moved in with when I left my husband. She was on the phone. It's tape recorded. And that was hellacious. That's one of the worst things I've ever heard of a parent doing to a child. And my mother didn't even really know what kind of a parent I was. I guess she was assuming that I was a lot like her, and I wasn't. I lived
Mm.
in the country. She had seen me parent for a total of a couple weeks throughout those 3 years. My daughter was 3.5.
Wow.
And then Steve, my mother, died without telling anyone what she had done. She didn't tell a single person. She didn't come clean to anyone that she had done this to me. And she died leaving a family narrative in place. I mean, this isn't just about your story, this is about the whole family narrative. So, the family narrative in place on my mother's side of the family is that I was a terrible daughter and I was a terrible mother. And my mother died, leaving the narrative in place. Now, what did I do with that? Oh, shit. I struggled like you wouldn't believe with that. I was devastated, especially for me, having external validation means so much. I really wanted people to know. In fact, I've never told this story. I've never shared this story. I've told one cousin who I don't think believed me, and I dropped it. And I've told my close friends. I I just shared this because it's relevant. Okay, how do I distill the facts of this story? Okay, the facts. My mother loved me. This is true. She gave a lot for me. She also was really troubled. She did her best with the tools that she had. That's the fact. Her best wasn't really good enough for me. That's the fact. But I know my mother loved me, and I also know that she had a lot of pride and that she didn't work up the courage to share with our family members what she had done. And I know that she felt terrible about it. And I know that it took a great deal of courage for her to call me and tell me this. Can you even imagine? And then and she didn't know she was going to die 3 weeks later. She probably would have come clean with the family. It would have changed everything. My relationships with that side of the family are still not really good,
Mm.
partly
Uh,
because of that and the story that it left.
Thank you for sharing that. And uh, I give you a lot of credit, not only for sharing that, but also the courage to say and feel that
Yeah.
your mom loved you, because you don't have to do that. You just leave that part out, but
Right.
you're saying it because you believe it and you feel it. And one would think, like, how the heck could a mother love their child and then do that?
Right.
But you still say it.
Well, and the thing is that my mother loved my daughter, and she loved my daughter enough to betray me so that she could have access to my daughter.
But that was for her.
Yeah.
What I get from this is that it's more of the story is more of your mother wanting access to your daughter
Mhm.
for her own purposes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
she's,
but my mother loved, she loved children. It's the irony of my lifetime. She loved children. My mother was a school teacher and
mm,
she loved her children. She taught in Baltimore inner city schools. She loved those kids. She gave it all to those kids. And when she came home, she had nothing left for me.
you
Now,
mean, yeah, okay, let me understand that. You mean that she was so depleted from her job, and because if you're an empath too, it takes a lot out of you. So by the time she came home to you after working all day, to give to another child, you feel that she was kind of depleted from that point.
yeah. Yep. And that's a story.
Well, okay, and that's a great point, Chris. That's a great point because we don't know, if that's fact. that's your story. And I'm not taking anything away from you at all.
No, I got it
At
doing
all.
myself.
But that's one of those that would make you think and say, is that why this person acted that way? And I'm now making this broad for anybody. Did they act that way because of this situation? Is that story true? We'll never
Right.
know in this.
Yeah. And Steve, the fascinating thing about this is that, that is my experience that she gave it all away. She was a great teacher. And it is my experience that she had nothing left to give me. But the thing is, the story could really come in if I made that mean that she didn't love me. Like my mother loved me. Like I was the most important thing in the world to her. And because of all the things that had happened in her life, she just couldn't demonstrate that love consistently. She could be extremely loving, and then, as I've mentioned, she could slap me in the face for no reason. It was unpredictable. You never knew when it was coming.
And there's
But
many things that we could insert into the story at that point. Maybe she saw herself in you and she wasn't happy with herself. I'm just hypothetically rolling on this one. And you were the one that was punished for that, for her own feelings. That could be a story. That could be a story. There's so many
yeah,
different things here. Mm.
could be story, could be true. And when someone dies, it's real hard to sort out the truth from fiction. So for the
Yeah,
listener today, like I would suggest have these conversations now. Like it is important. Your personal story is part of your family narrative. It shows up in every aspect of your life, and it matters. And when you distill the truth from the story, it makes a difference. So you want to hear how I would suggest we go about distilling this?
please. Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing to do is realize that your story was actually informed by the perception of a wounded child. Like a wounded 3-year-old wrote the story of your life. Okay. Next, take responsibility for your own points of view that emerged from your own wounding and trauma. And I suggest, of course, write this stuff down. Like it's really great to journal this. Third, write down your false narrative. Be victimy. Like get into it. Describe in vivid detail how horrible it was. Fourth, separate the fact from fiction by identifying where your story veered off from the truth. That's the trickiest part, and you've already gotten specifically to those parts. Okay. So that's where it can be really challenging. Do you have any questions about that so far?
Not at all. Nope.
Okay. Next, fifth step, identify your own unique thought, feeling, and behavior patterns that came from the false narrative that drove you away from your true nature, which is who you were meant to be before you were changed by things that happened in life.
Hmm.
Next step, very important step. Stop retelling the painful story.
Hmm.
It it re-injures you, it perpetuates your suffering and the suffering of other people. Like this is a very powerful step.
It is. And I can see why the story keeps being told because we're creatures of habit and it's comfortable and addicted to suffering.
Yeah,
So
we're comfortable in suffering.
it just feels very familiar to go back to that story.
Yes, exactly. So it's funny, like if you stop telling the story, there'll be a void. So we want to have a story to tell.
Uh,
So the next step would be, and this is something I'm just starting to work with. Okay, identify your greatest strengths that came from your greatest wounds.
hmm,
This is where your primary addiction to suffering actually created and opened the way for your primary drive to overcome. This is it's your greatest strength. It's what it's what helped you accomplish everything that you've accomplished to this date. And this is not all about the terrible things that happen. Like good things have come from suffering. We have to figure out what they are. If you know your greatest drive to overcome, there will be a corresponding thought, feeling, behavior. Okay. Thought, I'm lovable. Feeling, I can do what I need to do to make my dreams come true. Behavior, being in action, learning how to follow through. Just an example. Okay.
Can I
So,
address number seven because it was an epiphany in the last like about 2 months, and it's
okay.
directly related to that. And my father, which I just mentioned, um, always wanted to be on the radio. I might have shared this, but I'm just this is s- so on point with what you just said. Always wanted to be on the radio. I was a kid, saw some plans in a magazine to build a transmitter, sent it to my father. He worked in an electrical plant. I thought maybe he could build his transmitter. I could, broadcast. If he could, got to know somebody in a plant. I could be wrong as a kid. However, he never even addressed it. He never, call him up like, Dad, did you get my envelope? And like, yeah, I did. And then it kind of left there and just kind of went away. And I always thought, like, that kind of sucks. Like, I wanted it so bad. I didn't want anything else except that. I looked at this about a month ago, too, and I thank him for that. Thank you for not building that. Why? Because it pushed me to teach myself electronics so I could eventually start building those kinds of things and more. And that's how I got my first job when I was a teenager in radio and never looked back. But if he built it, maybe that would have enabled me and it wouldn't have been the same outcome. So I thank him for that. So I'm looking at what you just said, find the strengths from the wounds. And I believe I did that.
I believe you did too. Determination came out of that for you.
Hmm.
And, the story could be my dad didn't love me enough, or the story could be my dad didn't get around to it. Like they're
Or didn't
very,
know how, and maybe he didn't want to admit he didn't know how. I don't know.
who knows?
Don't
Yeah.
know.
So
Don't know.
that's a great example, Steve. So
Okay.
that did help create your primary drive to overcome.
And
And
I'm not gonna, I just final thought here. I previously would write the story. Well, he didn't care enough. He didn't love me. He would have done it if he did. I don't look at it that way. There could be other stories that I'm not going to write the story. I don't know what the facts are, and it could be he may be embarrassed that he wasn't able to do it or didn't know anybody that could build that. So I just let that go. It's irrelevant. Because it's not fact. I don't know what the fact is.
right, I think clinging to clinging to, the most objective truth is probably helpful for
Mm,
all of us.
yeah.
So, yes. Okay. So, and I would say for me, like my primary drive to overcome certainly came out of my greatest suffering, no doubt. So here's the next step. Okay. The eighth step, if you have the time to write this down, I would say write I already had you write the story really victim-y narrative, right? Now I want you to write the story less victim-y. And it's going to take several versions before you get the victim out of the story. It might take you 5, it might take you 15, but keep writing it until you get it more truthful, more accurate, more objective. Okay. Now, then, just for fun, I thought this would be great. So, if when you get to the place where you have an objective story and you realize that you do deserve to feel loved, to be happy, you do deserve to find peace, you do deserve to make the best out of everything that happens, to be determined to make your dreams come true, whatever it is, okay? Then I want you to rewrite the entire story revolving completely around your primary drive to overcome. Okay, this is great because it gives
Hmm.
you a totally different story. It's drastically different than the victim story that you had been telling yourself. You can do this all in a day if you want. But it gives you a totally different story. And then next step, 10th step, write a balanced, as truthful as possible new version of the story. Include the wounding and include the drive to overcome.
Hmm.
Have it be balanced. I think that's a good way to get to a balanced, accurate empowering, uplifting story that gets you away from the victim mentality. And I think that that's powerful.
Wow. Mm. We're just about out of time. This is like so
Well,
impactful.
then let me let me have one final thought.
Please.
Then bonus is share your insights in your new story with the people who were involved in your old story. If they're alive, and if they're not alive, then they clearly know already, or you can tell them still. But that'll bring you around full circle.
I had a thought. Share
Yes,
your insights and your new story with the people who are involved in your story. And even if they're no longer around or you can't be connected to them for whatever the reason is, you can still share it with them. You can still, as you can write them a letter that never gets sent. You can still present it to them,
right. One of the
right?
best ways to do that, I think, is to set up two chairs facing each other. You sit in one and you imagine the other person in the other chair, and you say everything that you need to say to them. And then you get up and you switch chairs. You sit in their chair and you answer from their perspective to you. And then you switch chairs again and be yourself, and you're dialoguing. That's a great way to dialogue with someone who's passed or that you're disconnected from.
Fantastic. Even in hypnotherapy, they often do that, where I face myself as a child, adult to a child, like
Mhm.
literally looking at myself and spoke to myself as a child and vice versa again. Will never forget it and made such a difference. So you're right on target there. Thank you for today. Just the stories we tell ourselves. My gosh, it's like we make this stuff up. Most of it, we make it all up. And we don't need to because we're just hurting ourselves.
I mean, life is hard enough. Let's not add insult to injury, right?
Yeah. How do we connect with you? What's the best way?
Check out my website, chrisclearday.com. My phone number's on there. I love texting, calling, and I will get around to email.
There's a reason you're our professional of the year because you are so plugged in and passionate about what you do. Um, and just offers, I don't know anybody that does what you do with the clarity and the understanding. And, I've been on a journey for a few years learning about this stuff. You just make it clear and validate all of it. And you're transparent. And for that, I love you and I appreciate everything today. As always, looking forward next time we get together.
Thank you, Steve. And I am naming you the host of the year, and you are the host with the most. And I couldn't do any of this without you. So thank you so much. And I love and appreciate you.
I just talk, as I say, from New York. I just talk. That's it. It comes from the universe. The words come out just because they're supposed to. Thanks. We'll catch up soon. We'll be right back.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.